we got the idea that we were going to tie together the concepts of military surveillance and current state-of-the-art security with where it came from, how long it's been around, why it exists, and how now, today, the techniques of covert information gathering, multi-layered deception, espionage, counter-espionage, misdirection, redirection, they all kind of fit into what we see that goes on with what we hear from certain politicians and what we hear from certain news sources, sometimes the mainstream media. The ideas of guiding or directing or even so far as coercing people into a certain pattern of thought based on a planned structure that, you know, a kind of a planned program for people, and how this is used. Once again, this is something that's been used in various ways for centuries, but here and now today, with technology and with the, you know, the speed of communications, it's more powerful than ever. So we're going to, maybe almost for amusement, we're going to do a little bit of a historical background on some of the tools that used to be used way back 50, 60, 70 years ago, and relate that to how much more powerful it is today. Excuse me. So before we get started, I will just go through our community guidelines disclaimer. The points of view and purpose of this video is not to incite fear, violence, harass, or bully anyone in any way, but rather to share opinions and thoughts with other like-minded individuals curious about the subject to encourage conversation and awareness. The opinions expressed on this stream belong solely to the person espousing them and are not an expression of the channel Cyberhumanfrontiers. This video does not claim to give legal, medical, or political or financial advice. The video and our YouTube channel in general may contain certain copyrighted works that were not specifically authorized to be used by the copyright holders, but which we believe in good faith are protected under federal law and the Fair Use Doctrine for one or more of the reasons noted above, which you can refer to as the Copyright Act of 1976. And thank you for joining us tonight. TMC, how are you, sir?
Andy, I'm doing good. Doing good.
That is a good thing. That is wonderful. Welcome to everybody out in the chat. It's going to be an interesting and a different discussion tonight, and it's going to be perhaps very timely. So, starting off, if I could get most of my voice back. Hey, there it is. It's back again. Starting off, when we talk about advanced technology as it can be used in surveillance and monitoring and tracking and all that stuff, we have laid groundwork and shown patents, many, many, many episodes of all of the little pieces of that. But now, here and now today, I got one thing that I'll put up if I can get it up here. Yeah, there it is. Technology just keeps advancing. So what we have here is a picture of a person, and we see how it maps out specific characterizing and differentiating shapes and parts of a face. But this is just one little thing going on. And guess what this is? The U.S. Department of Homeland Security has now tested technology that can recognize faces that have a mask on them. This is just one little microcosm of an example of the greater and greater capacity, flexibility, and agility of technology here and now. It's just, wow. It just keeps moving on, and that's just one little instance of it. And where we've come from over the last years, excuse me one second here. Where we've come from, I'm still working on trying to get my voice back. Where we've come from over a period of decades is places like this. Take a look at this thing. This is a pigeon. with a camera strapped to its belly. All right. This is old tech. It worked, and it worked effectively many, many years ago in the Cold War. And there's a person who was in that career and actually working to implement this type of technology and perfect it and use it. And we got a couple of short videos here that we could show a little bit of, which is like where it used to be, and then we want to get into where things are now. So if you're interested in following along with us, I think it's in a way it's amusing, and in another way it's orienting to the developments as they've come along little by little. And you always got to keep in mind there's far more advanced stuff out there, or behind the scenes out there, than we probably ever know about. So this is a little feature that I have, and we want to thank Wired Magazine in advance for letting us perpetuate and propagate a little bit of this production that they made here. And this is a lady named, what was her name? I got it right here. This was Jonah Mendez, who worked for the CIA. So if you would like, we're going to just share the sound on that, because otherwise you're not going to hear it. And we're going to just listen to her talk about where it was then. And you have a second video by her, which will tell you a little bit about how it developed. So here she goes. I'm going to skip into it a little bit here. That picture of the pigeon.
There is an interesting story.
That picture of the pigeon with the camera on it just really captured my imagination. Say, wow, could a pigeon really take off with a camera that big strapped onto its belly? I don't know, but they made it work.
There is an interesting history of using homing pigeons to collect intelligence. We learned to put harnesses and cameras on the pigeons. They were very, very small. The combined weight of the harness and the camera was 1.5 ounces. The cameras in question were motorized cameras, battery-operated cameras that would take pictures at predetermined intervals. The pigeons must have looked absolutely innocent, flying over whatever their targets were. One of the homing pigeon, of course, is it will always come back. And so we would put our lasers, they'd fly over the Navy field, we'd bring them back home, we'd develop their film. And the reports are that the precision in their photographs was very good, at least as good as what we had in satellite photography at the time. The Minox camera was an amazing camera for its day. It was really the first sub-miniature camera. It was about 3 inches long. It would fit in the palm of your hand. You could take pictures unbeknownst to anybody else. You didn't even need to be a spy to do it, because this was a commercially available camera. You could copy anything with the Minox. The people that were using them were the foreign agents who had access to the intelligence, who could get right up next to the documents and take the picture. Agents were always in a time crunch, and when you get down to the nitty-gritty, when you're actually taking the photos, which is an act of espionage in most of those situations, it was usually you wanted to get in and out and not be caught doing what you were doing. It was the toughest part of an operation. We were photographing documents that would give us the information we needed. Typically, they might be minutes from a meeting or an agenda for a meeting, talking about what our enemies were getting ready to do next. There are many ways to conceal cameras. This camera is the Ticina camera, and it could fit in a cigarette box. Another concealed camera was the Matchbox camera. The fun part about the Matchbox camera was that it was just a box with a camera in it, but it looked like a matchbox, and you could get, back then everybody had these wooden matchboxes, and you could take the label off whatever local restaurant or hotel and put it on your Matchbox camera. There's another category of body-worn cameras, and there were two particular cameras that were interesting in that regard. One was called a Ticina, the other one was called a Robot. They were both spring-wound, but you could get a group of pictures without touching the camera and without physically touching the shutter mechanism. You could put one in a bra, a tie, a belt, a pregnant woman, a button. They are kind of all part of a group of places to put cameras where they wouldn't be expected, where they would probably not be discovered, and where you'd be able to covertly take some pictures that your office thought was necessary, and you'd.
So I think you may have a little bit of an idea where we're going with this. The perspective is priceless. When we look at what they accomplished with this old technology, and then when you consider what is now so much more miniaturized, and speaking about the resolution of any type of a spying device or these were just, image capture. But now, not only is there very, very precise image capture, but real time, both audio and video monitoring, as well as scanning surveillance that comes out of our very smartphones. That's how it does face recognition to log you in, to okay you to get onto your phone. So, guys, it's just changed so much. Good to see you all out there. I see Light Switch has got the eyes looking, and hi Val, good to see you, and everybody else. Chaz, great to see you, and KLC. So it blows me away that they got so much utility out of this stuff then, and now you can just let your imagination go. The sky is the limit now with the sophistication and the capacity and the facility of modern technology, if it were applied to surveillance purposes, which it is. So if you're enjoying this blast from the past, I know I am. We'll go, it's not really that long. We'll go a little more on this thing.
Actuate them by putting your hand in your pocket, by putting your hand on the strap of your purse, by 100 different ways, and take the picture. If you're wearing a body-worn camera, you're more interested in the place that you're at, the place that you're going. You might want to see who's meeting with who, who's interacting with who. You might want to see, walking by a building that usually doesn't have an open door, what's in there. There were lots of ways to conceal these cameras, and we used them all. I loved the Tropel pin camera. We only gave these cameras to our very, very best agents, and the one that had the very best access. These cameras were handmade. The Tropel was the smallest concealed camera that we had. It was made by one man. It contained an optic that was 8 tiny pieces of glass stacked on top of each other, and it couldn't be duplicated anywhere in the world. The Tropel camera could go places that nothing else could go, and collected just amazing intelligence for the Central Intelligence Agency. So it wanted to be 13 inches off the piece of paper. So in the training, you teach the agent that he was the tripod. Tokachev was a foreign agent who used our...
Look at that amazing engineering from long ago. And where there's a will, there's a way. So there was a will then to perform these various methods of spying and all this stuff. And there was a motivation. There's ever so much more so motivation now in the world that we live in than there was then. And there is ever so much more power in the technology. So can you just imagine what a dense spider web of surveillance, counter surveillance, various methods of infiltrating the other side, so many different ways, and they're being used, and we hear about it. You hear about it in passing. This was hacked, that was gotten into, or a whole lot of accounts got leaked through some company. I think China has done quite quite a good job on that in terms of hacking into things and getting a lot of information. And it's done, in the computer world, but also the optical surveillance. Satellites have such advanced optics in them now that they can easily photograph something like a car license plate from way up in low Earth orbit. And it's all got a use. And when those people had a will to do it way back then, well, they still do. So that's she's got a little bit more. She may have a few more little devices she'll show us here.
Propel pen, concealment device to great effect. His case was amazing. He was called the $1 billion spy, and that was because with his photography, he collected the plans and intentions of the Soviet Union as regards weapon system 10 years out. Its radar systems, airborne and on the ground. He had the schematics, he photographed them. The Department of Defense at the Pentagon received them, and they said, this has saved us years and years of R&D and the money that we would spend doing the R&D, because we have the plans for their next generation of defensive weapons. The Tropel camera was a breakthrough in size.
Sorry to interrupt, but what this translates into is savings of R&D dollars, which is money, and it translates into strategic temporal advantage, and it translates into power and power balance, all of which factors are fully in play in this world now, more than ever before. She goes on.
And the quality of the images that it would produce. There was really never anything like it before, and I think there was nothing like it since. Next time I'm going to, even if someone hands you the magazine, the size of a period, reducing it down, 1/2 by 11 page of text. Microdot is a very secure method of communication. A microdot is taking an 8.5 by 11 page of text, just a regular piece of paper, and reducing it down, and it ends up being about the size of a period at the end of a sentence in the international edition of Time magazine. Even if someone hands you the magazine and says there's a microdot in the magazine, you will never, if you don't know the page and the paragraph and the sentence, you won't find the microdot. We'd send it to our foreign agent, and he would know. Maybe we'd send him a secret writing message that says, your package will arrive along with Time magazine. We'd have some code to tell him the page and paragraph. So I'm holding a couple of microdots that have been concealed behind a stamp. We've separated the stamp from the sticky backing. And so if you can see, there's a microdot in each corner. When this stamp is put onto an envelope, these microdots become absolutely invisible. The agent would, whatever it was adhered to, he'd tear it out. He'd put it in a cup of water. The dot would float off because it's water-soluble glue holding it. And the agent would have a lens. It used to be called a Fresnel lens. It looked like a grain of rice. He'd get a piece of cardboard, and he'd punch a hole in it, and he'd take his Fresnel lens, and he'd put it in the hole, and then he'd put some spit on his finger, pick up the dot, put it on the end of the Fresnel lens, and hold it up to the sun or a light, and he could read an 8.5 by 11 page of text.
TMC, did you know that? Is that amazing or what?
Yeah, no, I've heard of a Fresnel lens before, but I did not
Big
know.
ones.
Yeah, well, they use them.
Overhead projectors.
And they use them where I've read about them is they use them in electromagnetic transmission systems. They use them to focus the beams, steer the beams, things like that.
Same effect, but steering electromagnetics rather than steering light.
Well, it's just a different piece of the spectrum. That's
right.
all. Yeah.
That little lens that the person would have. Did you see what she just showed? It's a tiny lens and a tiny microdot. My goodness gracious. It's amazing. And the dot on the back of a stamp. Oh my goodness. I didn't know this stuff. I knew this was going to be good, but yeah, it's wild. Now, multiply it exponentially by 1,000 times the power of the capability of just how clandestine and convoluted things could be. That's our world now. And comment out there from Val said, yeah, also traders gave China access to our technology and more. And smart micro cameras, yep, unbelievable. It's absolutely unbelievable. Anyway, a little bit more here. Let me know if the stream's running okay. I got a error on one of my monitoring systems that says I got to reload the page. So as long as we're running okay, we're going to keep going.
It was fabulous. It was very secure. Photography played a large role in the Cold War. Some things that were just myths, we were able to prove. Some things that were rumors, we were able to disprove. Photography is sort of the indisputable truth very often. Not that the documents can't be wrong, but over time and distance, photography has been able to provide the information that the intelligence agency has been after. It's an important tool. Even though technology has changed a lot.
Not to interrupt, but I'm getting an error on my YouTube monitoring screen. Would somebody out in the chat just let me know whether it's running okay for you?
You're fine. I'm streaming it on my phone. It's fine.
Oh, you are?
Yeah, there's a little lag like normal, but it's
okay, cool. All right.
Running.
Yep. It's odd. I've reloaded the browser page on that other machine and it doesn't want to play, but you guys just let me know. I'll be watching the chat, okay?
Tradecraft hasn't.
And there you have it. Isn't that interesting? That's one blast from the past. We go from there to things a little bit more modern, which brings us now a little bit closer and closer to the present day, which is kind of where we're going with this here now. And modern cybersecurity, modern espionage, modern spying, and the tools for it, and events that happened recently in the nation's capital, whereby there is some concern over whether there was information that was supposed to be under the control and security of the government that may have gotten out. And there's been a whole lot of talk about that on various platforms. I got a couple of them up here that we can take a quick look at. And I got one of them right here. Any thoughts, TMC, so far here?
No, it was a great video. I think we should, push forward. We're a half hour in, so.
Already a half hour in. All right, well, we're going to push forward. And so, as many may know, I don't know how anybody wouldn't know, but there were people who were able to breach the security of the Capitol building this week. I'd recommend to people to withhold conjecture or to withhold from what the common narrative is of who did it and how and who they actually were. But we have an article. This one's from TechCrunch. And I'll just blow through them really quickly, but then I'll go back. We'll read a little bit out of one or two. So we got one here, national security concerns raised as loyalists storm the U.S. Capitol. And I think that they take a little bit of poetic license when they say Trump loyalists storming the U.S. Capitol, because I don't have any proof that tells me that was that. I honestly can't see patriots who wanted to go out and show their support for the president storming or destroying anything. Honestly, I just can't see that happening. That's not the character of the conservatives and the patriots. But anyway, that's, it's one article. That one happens to be from one publication. Another one. This one is from SC Magazine. The physical breach of Capitol buildings opens a cybersecurity Pandora's box. And we got another one. We're going to go through a couple of these. This one's kind of interesting because it's got a picture of a person in an office. The attack on the Capitol may pose a cybersecurity risk. Here's how. This one's from the LA Times. And this, once again, is this indicates a member of a pro-Trump mob. Okay, I don't know exactly who that was, and I won't sign on to agreeing with that from as is written by this author of this article for the LA Times. But this is apparently House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's office. So that's from one source. And then another one from, this is actually further down in the TechCrunch article. And when I look at this, I don't know, this actually looks pretty well staged to me. I don't know. That's just me, maybe my own sense. You know, you guys give me your comment of whether you think that this is something that someone who supports the president would come in and do, and would break windows to get there to do it. I don't know. I'm not really going totally on that. I'm not buying that hook, line, and sinker.
I don't think that. I think that whole thing looks staged. What I'm looking at this while you're talking about it, and the "We will not back down" piece right there stands out. The note that's turned horizontally kind of stands out a little bit.
Yep,
multiple
right.
Hand sanitizers kind of stands out a little bit, and what really gets me is the bowl of paper clips in the lower left.
Yeah, I caught that too.
That lady is not putting paper clips on anything.
Right.
She's just not. She's going to have things brought to her with paper clips on them. Right.
No, also we have a safety pin over there. Who knows what we're doing with that?
Yeah.
So
anyway, it's the one thing that really kind of stood out to me, is not really being, and with the amount of makeup that lady cakes on her face, where's the lipstick residue on her reusable mugs over there?
That's right. That's right. There should be some sort of residue of something, either on her fingers or her mouth or something should be on. You're right.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Yeah. Interesting picture. This one was from, right. TechCrunch. So, from the article, it's the image that's been seen around the world. One of hundreds of pro-Trump supporters in the private offices of House Speaker Nancy Pelosi after storming the Capitol and breaching security in protest of the certification of the election results for President-elect Joe Biden. Yeah, but you know what? Take a look at the whole context of that. In the morning, there was a very orderly and very, very patriotic and very peaceful group of speakers that were speaking. So what is it that at some point would kick this over the edge, just at the very moment that it was about the time that Vice President Mike Pence was going to go through the tallying of the electoral votes? It just doesn't hang right with me. The timing. Why did they pick exactly then to do it? How did they know? How was it coordinated? And how is it that magically barriers, normal crowd control barriers, are just removed out of the way so that people can just start barging in and storming in? And it really doesn't make a whole lot of sense in terms of it being a spontaneous, organic thing rather than something that was staged. But that's just my opinion. And remember, we are living in this age of espionage, deception, many technological tools with which to communicate and coordinate such things, illusion, and and going back and forth from both sides, vying for control of the narrative and in a situation. And I think that's a lot more of what's going on here. What do you think?
Something else stood out to me. Do you see the labeling on her phone?
Yes.
And the scribbles, like the numbers that look like they've been
omitted. Let me zoom in a little. I think we can get in a little closer.
Looks like there's 3 of them on there, on the phone panel on the right. 1, 2, 3, where they're dark, like scribbled out.
Yep.
I mean, what this is the Speaker of the House's phone? Really? Really?
When would she even ever bother to scribble onto one of those things?
Would she tolerate it?
No, not likely either.
I
Right.
mean, she's like this little wannabe princessy drunk royal, she's nah. Little, in her own mind, right? This little drunk little princess. This is not the desk of a drunk little princess.
The drinker of the house? I mean,
yeah, right. There's way too much hand sanitizer in there for the drinker of the house.
Totally staged.
Being that it's mostly made of alcohol.
Then what's this? This is one of those things where you make your finger sticky so that you can flip through pages, right?
Is that what that is?
Is that one of those little goo pads?
I don't know.
And a mouse with a wire.
A wire, yeah.
Wired mouse.
Anyway, yeah, this looks staged as hell.
Yep. It's an HP computer monitor. Okay. I'll let that go. It's got a property number. So that at least looks right. And then what do we see over here? We have a half ripped open envelope. We have
this looks like a staffer's desk.
Exactly. That's what I was thinking. This looks like a person lower in the echelon's desk. Yeah.
This is a staffer's desk. This is not her desk, dude. She's gonna have a desk the size of the president's desk. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
With a large open area to sit, and it looks like they have a sitting area beyond this desk. And
then look at all these sticky notes up here.
This is way too much information for somebody as stupid as Nancy.
Yep.
To have on her desk.
Yep. Oh yeah. So yeah, there's some of that. It's just Then there was another one that had a picture in it here. Well, there was something else maybe a little bit more interesting to read. Wow. Yep. Look at the way that this is. I honestly can't believe that thousands of Donald Trump supporters would storm and destroy property in the Capitol building. They're not stupid. They know that that's not a good thing to do. It's almost as if it makes out Trump supporters to be really foolish, unruly, and destructive people. And I don't.
This is everything. Well, this is a milquetoast, watered down version of what should have been written about the last 7 or 8 months of rioting and quote unquote protesting, and it's been inverted onto. No, wrong word. It's been projected onto an entirely different demographic of people.
Yep.
Completely projected onto, and so it's par for the course, man. They had to know this was going to happen.
Now, from the security standpoint, if indeed, so whoever it is that was in there, all right, and there were people that got in and did rush offices in the Capitol building facilities. Indeed, it would be true that if workstations were left open and something was a decrypted document was displayed on a computer screen, it could very well be that could be photographed by someone. Although there's a kind of a logical disconnect between, wouldn't you, if you're an unruly mob and you're rushing in, are you going to be equipped to do all sorts of cyber espionage when you get in there? Not likely. That wouldn't be likely. So the whole story, that aspect of it doesn't hang to support the idea that people that the IT people in the Capitol think that there's a huge cybersecurity threat. It's either one kind of person or another. It's someone who knows computers and they're going in there to plant malware or capture information or grab devices, or it's an unruly mob of people that know how to break windows. None of which, to me, to my intuition, feel like they are your average conservative patriot. Just doesn't sound right. So they go on. Ransomware introduction could have shut down the entire network and would have caused catastrophic outages if USB ports were not protected.
So what they're getting at there is people plugging in their own devices
Yes.
into the network and then having those devices then become access points,
if not blocked.
Right, for things. Right. So that speaks to how well is the network itself hardened.
Right.
During day-to-day operations. Can you just plug a USB stick into a computer in a staffer's office and pull information off the computer, or are there authentications and permissions?
Or out of the network,
yeah,
right?
I know that in some large organizations, they will issue you a USB stick that has encryption keys on it, and no other USB type storage device will work without a specific encryption key set.
Right.
And so the question, the way this is presented is wrong on so many levels, because if there is risk of the security infrastructure, cybersecurity infrastructure being compromised, if there's any risk of that at all, those risks were there prior to any event occurring on January 6th. And this idea that the individuals who stormed the Capitol are creating this cybersecurity risk, that's wrong. What should be clarified is that the Capitol's IT department should be the ones being scrutinized as it relates to their cybersecurity protocols. And if these protocols weren't in place prior to the 6th, what difference does it make?
Right.
The risk has been ongoing. It's not that this risk has been created as a result of a protest.
Exactly right. If there was subpar security, exactly right. This isn't something that you would just go in and immediately compromise because you were able to run in there after breaking a window. It just doesn't make sense. If there were security holes, if there weren't partitioned firewall rules for each and every computer on the network, so that you needed to have
device.
that specific key code in order to access
cell phones,
the
tablets,
device.
laptops, USB sticks, anything that accesses the network should be itemized, logged, and have some type of a encrypted handshake that's necessary.
Exactly.
Credentials, if you will, to be able to utilize or even get into the network. That's standard now. So
you see what we're saying when this is spun up. This is just one more thing that's been spun up. We have a headline here juxtaposed with a picture of people. I can't get the whole thing up on the screen at once, but this is the title. There is no logical connection between there being escalated cybersecurity fears all of a sudden and the fact that there are a bunch of people doing this. They just don't both happen.
There would be systems in place that as soon as they deemed it to be a breach of physical security, you would literally be able to very, very quickly lock down the network. You could lock everything remotely. And
it also could even be set to automatically lock.
Right.
If there was one...
if you had a broken window, a proximity sensor breach could theoretically trigger a network lockdown.
Yep. And those types of sensors would most likely be in position on a building such as this. They're glass break sensors, and they're very small piezoelectric devices that are in the area to detect the specific frequency of broken glass.
It's the temple of the people,
right?
Says Chucky Schumer. They desecrated this temple.
Oh, I know the language, and that language. That language grabs people's emotions.
It's all it is emotional language. Just like this. You see the picture? Cybersecurity, and then you got a bunch of people with their asses hanging out. It's like, wait a minute, this has nothing to do with cyber.
And look at the fear. So now here's why it matters. Can I put on my best Walter Cronkite voice? Good evening. Why it matters? Files, emails, and other data lifted from lawmakers would have enormous value to hostile foreign powers, cyber criminals and other bad actors. So that's making a statement that assumes that you're going to buy into the assumption that all of a sudden we're in cahoots with cyber criminals, and these guys are in cahoots with, like,
you just got to change the words around a little bit. Go back to, if you go back down to that paragraph.
Please change them.
Files, emails, and other data lifted from the lawmakers would expose the collusion between hostile foreign powers, cyber criminals, and other bad actors.
Yes. More close to the truth.
Yeah, that's
you can't get me to believe.
Might as well make it up a little more.
You can't get me to believe that this is a bunch of cyber hackers who are going to go in and in one motley, disorganized, chaotic event go in and completely undermine national. I mean, they actually completely destroyed national security, didn't they, by doing this? Right out the window or in the window.
Just
right.
It's pathetic.
So wait a minute, though. If any congressional devices or networks were breached, either amid the chaos Wednesday or via, say, a USB drive surreptitiously inserted into a computer, that could mean not only the theft of information, but the potential insert of malicious code for future exploitation or mischief. Oh, gosh. Sure. Sure. Yeah, you could. It could.
Yeah,
if it did. But if it did, the budget for what is the staff budget for the IT people at the Capitol building?
I bet it's more than $60 that it would cost to go buy a Wi-Fi router from Costco. I'm just guessing. I'm guessing. I'm
going to say that the IT payroll it's probably like a couple $1,000,000, right? Yeah, a year.
Yeah. Way more, but yeah.
Okay, so we're going to undermine that. So I'm going to go and buy a USB stick at Staples, and I'm going to be one of these guys, and I'm going to run in with my stick and put it into indiscriminately put it into a port in a computer, and all of a sudden, bam, I've undermined national security. I've now all of a sudden walked away with enormous value to hostile foreign powers. Can I say it right? China. Okay, cool. But this is the spin, and it's not just one. You've got, how many of these do we have? There was no shortage of articles to find about spinning up our concern and our outrage at the the soiling of the temple of the people with this. Where'd they go? This bunch. So we got that one. We got this one. We got the riot, okay, the attack on the Capitol. Okay, we got that one. Then there's a ton of them out there. Yep. We've opened a cybersecurity Pandora's box. So these guys opened, this has created a national crisis, right?
Sure.
Right. Okay. I don't know.
I'm going to find an article real quick.
If you want to talk about the reality of what technology really can do, we will show you we'll take you back to the real world of reality instead of spun up panic and outrage at the temple, which is things like this. But you've probably got something. I'll pull this down for a minute.
Yeah, I'll show this real quick because this is more appropriate. If I can find the right screen so that I can share. Unbelievable. Hang on, here we go.
It's almost as if it's a form of some kind of psyop being done on us, to coerce our thinking in a direction. And I think many people, and I love everybody, but I think many people are just too susceptible to just having that elevate their emotions, and then they just get upset and they get reactive and they get afraid and they say, oh no, we got to do something about this. Who's going to help us? And they want to call, Chuck Schumer. Can you have the temple of the people cleansed from this?
This is what they're trying to compare and contrast it to. The cybersecurity, national security threat, what's been done with the January 6th protests to something like this. The CIA admitting to spying on Senate staffers. It looks like this is back in 2014, where they're calling for Brennan to resign. John Brennan, former director of the Central Intelligence Agency, issued an extraordinary apology to the leaders of the U.S. Senate Intelligence Committee on Thursday, conceding that the agency's employees spied on committee staff and reversing months of furious and public denials. Mm-hmm. This is the contrast that they're trying to present into people's minds as it relates to the brevity and the gravity and the atrocity of the potential breach of the cybersecurity network. Now, let me ask you this question, just logical thinking here. If the CIA admitted to spying on the Senate, on Congress, the congressional body, don't you think that would have warranted an evaluation on cyber security, network security for that building, for those individuals, implement and require an implementation of new security protocols day-to-day for day-to-day activities, et cetera, et cetera?
Of course.
I mean, this was
with 6 years to figure out how to implement it, to bring us to the beginning of 2021.
Yeah. And so anyway, I call bullshit. That's all. I just call bullshit.
I don't disagree. What's interesting though is to take a step back and to look. One needs to detach oneself emotionally completely from anything that would cause you to be either outraged or in fear, and just look at the actual facts, look at the actual events, look at the time of it, full situational awareness about what happened, when it happened, and what was going on, and what was perhaps, I'm going to just say, advantageous to disrupt what was going on in those chambers on that day at that time, and to try to spin it and turn it around and like alter the meaning of it, at least to people's perceptions. To someone with a particular agenda, there would have been a huge benefit in derailing what was the program going on in those chambers. Now, we don't know exactly what that all is. It might not be what we might quickly fill in the blank to be. It might be something else. And we should not assume, we should not jump to a quick conclusion and think that we know exactly what it is, because you know what? Over the next week or two, there might be some surprises coming that a lot of people didn't know about. Any speculation on that?
No.
Well, what else do I have to play with here? There's more on from Jonah Mendez. She does do a nice kind of a logical layout of exactly how systematic and how well planned that the people were in the CIA that did the espionage and surveillance and spying work that they did. And, they're very cold, logical, procedural, planning, operational people. And when they get to doing something, they are very, very careful and very precise. And it's nothing like what we, as you said, ludicrous. Let me put the share back up here. But this is just two people with two opinions. All right. So I'm certainly willing to hear other opinions as well. I just think that the media is taking us for a ride. The politicians and the media are taking us for a ride every time we turn around. This isn't the one I wanted. This is a good one. This is also Jonah Mendez. We don't have to go too deep into it, but it is interesting. How many people are old enough to remember the television show Mission Impossible, where they did all sorts of really very successful infiltration of other organizations using techniques of deception? and using the state of the art at that time of electronics with those little cameras and things like that, and small, well, by today's standards, rather large listening devices. Now they're ubiquitously part of all of our smartphones, to be honest with you. But anyway, we have a TEDx with Jonah Mendez, and we want to just, I don't think I shared the sound here. Hang on a second. We want to give acknowledgement and thank in advance the opportunity to replay this TEDx. So, Ted, if you're out there, thank you. This is, she did this one later, and this one is more of a, I got to mute myself. This one's more of a kind of an overview of the techniques that they used during all throughout her career. It's not that long, and those of you who really liked Mission Impossible, you'll find that a lot of what she talks about is what you used to see on that television show. Here we go.
CIA officer for over 25 years. Over 25 years. I lived and worked overseas and around the world. I lived in Europe. I lived in the Far East. I lived in the subcontinent. I was supporting CIA operations from a technical point of view on a global basis. The office that I belonged to at CIA was called the Office of Technical Service. We were, some people said, the CIA's answer to Q in the James Bond movies.
I just had to pause right there without saying anything. I'm just going to pause for a second. I guess I could say something. This is the CIA that we're talking about, and she is older and maybe retired. I'm not sure that she's retired, possibly. Can you just for a minute imagine what they could do with today's technology? Way, 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 way more than anything that you're going to hear her talk about in this historical review.
To a certain extent, that's exactly what we did. We were composed of mechanical and electrical engineers. We had chemists and physicists working for us, and then another group of people harder to explain. We had counterfeiters, we had disguise officers, forensics folks. We were a big cluster of technical capability that could handle just about any kind of operation that you could imagine, and some that you could not. Like Q, we did not give James our toys. We knew that James was either going to lose them or he was going to break them. So we traveled with our equipment, typically. Moscow, where we were focusing a lot of our attention, was one of the hardest places in the world, if not the hardest place in the world, for the CIA to work operationally. We were considered by the KGB to be the main enemy, and we returned the compliment by calling Moscow the belly of the beast. It was a beast. It was, we thought the KGB was 10 feet tall, and so did they.
I just want to help. Well, I want to offer my thoughts on keeping perspective. The enemy of the day or the adversary of the day could be anybody. Let's just say that there are people who do this type of work and they're good at it and they're paid to do it, and they are paid to be aimed at whoever the adversary is, and that's their target, and that's who they're going to infiltrate or perform their spying and espionage on. So she's talking about the KGB. That was then and now is now. So in the back of your mind, you might be thinking about what forces on both sides of this there might be and who is the mutual adversary of each other. And that doesn't mean that either one of them, well, I guess one of them probably would be bad and one of them would be good. But it could be that they're both bad and they're just battling with each other too. So just, thoughts on general perspective. We're talking about the professional skill of being this type of a person with this type of expertise. But now transplant that to the present times and consider just what could go on between countries or even within one country, even within a country such as the United States. And she goes on.
And so we spent a good amount of time trying to figure out how to do the work. The work was meeting with agents, putting down dead drops, putting up signals, making phone calls, mailing letters, doing all of that while under surveillance by the mighty KGB. Our officers were under 24-hour, 7-day-a-week surveillance of all types. Our apartments were bugged. Our cars were followed. If we were walking through Moscow, we were being stalked by foot surveillance right behind us. It was almost impossible to get anything done. The surveillance was like an...
I have to apologize in advance to Jonah Mendez for interrupting her. But when we're talking about surveillance, TMC, I can't quite stay in one place on my chair here. Surveillance now is taking place in everybody's smart device that practically everybody in this country carries with them, by way of having an operating system in there that's capable of turning on or turning off the microphone, the speaker, the camera, the infrared imaging device, any and all of that. So when she talks about how it, they had to, go about their business with eyes in the back of their head, and they knew it. How many people think about the ubiquitous devices that are now all with every one of us, 18 hours a day? I'm just saying, just thinking. She goes on.
Embrace from the KGB that was smothering us. So what do? How do you react to that kind of opposition in the field? My husband was Tony Mendez, and he was played by Ben Affleck in the movie called Argo. Tony, they didn't mention it in the movie, but Tony had deep connections to Hollywood, to the tradespeople out in LA that did a lot of things we were interested in doing. Special effects people, makeup people. Tony was chief of disguise 10 years before I was chief of disguise. And so he passed on some of his expertise to me. But he had a particular interest in the magic industry out in LA. Not so much the magicians on the stage, but the people that were working behind the scenes to make that magic happen. So we went to LA and we posed some questions to them. We said, we have a problem. We're looking for novel solutions. What have you got? Can you help us? We need to hide the true identity of our officers in Moscow. Well, LA did have some ideas, of course. That's what they do for a living. They introduced us to a new concept. They said, what you are calling an operation, we call a performance. That's what we do. We put on performances. And before we start working on that performance, we have to define the stage.
Are we watching a movie? Are we watching a performance unfold on the national scene? Is that kind of outside the realm of possibility? Is it outside the realm of possibility that instead of there being Force A and Force B, there might be other layers of other semi-alliant or semi-opposed forces, and there might be more than one, so that there might be, as you've heard the term before, double agents or people with mixed loyalties. So could we be having, in the present day, a very complex intertwined network of people with mixed loyalties? And I would propose to you that is what we have nowadays. And of course, all comments welcome if this promotes any thought, because it seems like we see a lot that is I don't know, we're kind of fed a narrative of what we're supposed to believe, and I basically just reject all of it. And I know that there are a lot of critical thinkers out there who are watching this discussion that we're having tonight and who will watch it. So it's just thoughts to keep in mind.
That the performance is going to take place on. So for you, CIA, is that a streetscape? Is it a parking garage? Are you going to be in a car? You have to know what your stage is. Then you have to know who your audience is. Who are you playing to? Who are you trying to fool? Is it the guard outside of the American embassy that you have to walk back and forth past him a couple of times a day? Is it the team in the car following you down the street? Or is it the hidden video camera in your parking garage in the embassy? Who is watching you? Who do you try?
So the situation, the environment that you're going to be in, that is what determines what methods one is going to use to be able to cloak oneself or to be able to stay covert or unobtrusive or whatever it is. Comment out in the chat, Val, and it was about whether things are staged or not. And her comment is that relative to the rush on the Capitol, that was, in her opinion, a staged event. And she cites a particular general who said that special forces seized laptops and that there was also a handful of Antifa present. And I have reason to believe that all that is true. And I think it was not, I think she corrected the name of the general. It was General McInerney. Yep. Anyway, good thoughts. Let's just keep making sense of all this.
And fool. Once you assemble those two pieces, you can pretty much choose the time and choose the place and simply overwhelm them with your performance. Then they showed us some tools that they used. The one that really caught our eye is what's called a stunt double mask. You all know how they're used. When the movie star is so famous or so good looking that they can't risk damaging him, they'll put a stuntman in a stunt double mask on the horse, except for Tom Cruise. Tom Cruise does not allow stunt doubles in his movies. He does it all himself. We liked the idea of stunt double masks. They're quick on, they're quick off. They dramatically change your appearance. And we started using them and found them to be valuable to our operations. But that audience piece of it did not allow you to get close enough to one of those masks before the illusion fell apart and you saw it was a mask. So we went back to our disguise labs out at Langley and we invented a whole new genre of masks. Masks that are so good, that are so realistic, that you can actually get up close and have a personal contact with someone for an extended period of time. They're good enough that you can brief the President of the United States.
Just pausing right there, taking a look at that picture. She's talking about masks, and my imagination goes further, which is Chazotron. Couldn't it be that you would have an entire person that was a substitute person, or a person that if the individual is of very high value or needs to be extremely protected or kept out of the environment, it seems like it's really quite possible to have a whole nother person with an appropriate mask or disguise to take the place of person A. And here we have what I think that she's going to describe is someone who was wearing a mask, and she this looks like George Bush Sr., and it looks like she may be suggesting that this was a masked person and that that president was unaware of it. But we'll let her tell us herself.
In the Oval Office, wearing a mask. And he isn't sure if it's you or if it's someone else. I said the stunt double mask came off quickly. So did our new masks, on and off like a hat. Those masks were the beginning of a whole new generation of work that we did at the CIA. Once we could make these masks that fit you so well, then we discovered we could make a twin. We could make another you. There could be two of you. We could actually make 5 or 6 of you, but usually one extra was all we needed. If we had 2 of you, we could play some games with surveillance and perhaps get some of our officers free. And we did that.
So what would people need extras of? High-profile people, top politicians, perhaps extras of, maybe extras of a president because of the potential risk of injury or assassination. Extras of, I don't know if we need any extra Nancy Pelosi's. I don't know, but it's all well within the range of what they would find to be advantageous. So I think that this type of thing can be done. It has been done. We have a lady telling us that this is a regular practice, and that they only usually needed 1 extra, but you probably could have 1 or 2 or 3.
We also were working on something called a Jack in the Box. It was a pop-up dummy that we used in car surveillance situations. And we discovered we could make a mask of you, put it on the dummy with a wig and your clothing. In a car surveillance situation, you could exit the car, the dummy would pop up, surveillance would come around the corner and never have a clue what was going on.
I try to have a sense of TMC. Are you there with me? I try to have a sense of humor when she brings up Jack in the Box and pop-up dummies. Why am I just thinking of Congress? I just keep thinking of Congress.
I'm trying to not jade my perspective of Congress too much. It's already jaded, but to indulge in thinking that, underneath their masks, they're just giant steaming piles of shit. I don't want to do that too awful much. I might enjoy it. So
and you didn't do it. No. You did not jade. No.
I was simply saying that if I was going to
hypothesizing that you might under extenuated circumstances, but
exactly.
You're not that extenuated tonight.
I'm glad you understand that I wouldn't actually, consider for a moment that
not at
what
all.
They say to us and what they act like is their mask, and deep down inside they're big steaming piles of fetid shit.
Say disingenuous and right. And Chazatron, it is the age in which clones would be possible. We do it all the time with lower vertebrates on the evolutionary chain. So yeah, that's not impossible. I can't prove that it's been done, but yeah. Okay, she's going further here. She's almost done. It's fascinating. These are regularly used methods and techniques and systems.
This all sounds a little far-fetched, and you wonder how valuable was it really? There was one case that always stuck in my mind. We met with a Soviet asset one particular night, and he handed us a bag of film. Once it was developed, the Pentagon told us that night, that film saved the U.S. government, Department of Defense, $2 billion in research and development that they did not have to pursue, because we now knew what the Soviet Union was doing in their radar program for the next 10 years, airborne and on the ground, offensive and defensive. If you want to talk about value for the work that's being done. That's just one small example. You might wonder that I can tell you these stories. And I can tell you these stories because this information is no longer classified. Although that cat and mouse game goes on apace in Moscow, it's not over. You might also ask me, well, then what are they doing if they're not doing this? And I would have to tell you that I can't tell you. Because if I did, I'd have to kill you. Thank you.
That was beautiful. That's from September 9th, 2019, fairly recent. There were a few fill-in-the-blanks that I was thinking of when she was speaking, which when she said, if you wonder whether that's going on today, and she said in Moscow, I was thinking, is that going on today elsewhere, such as here? And my obvious fill-in-the-blank was, if they can use it, if they have the power to use it, and if it gives them advantage, tactical advantage in the situation, then you can be 99% certain that they do use it. We'd be naive to think anything else. So anyway, how you doing, Light Switch? So that was the fun stuff. And would you like to get into some of, what, I mean, this is what we do all the time on this show is we tell you what I gotta, let me kill that echo. Hang on a second here. Yeah. I don't know, TMC, where do you want to go from here? With this, all this stuff is setting it's necessary to set the table to show what type of work is done, in case anybody didn't really know it already anyway, which you guys probably all do. But it's just, just take all of those purposes and methods and goals and rationales and now turbocharge them with the power of things that we have today, such as progressive radar-assisted facial recognition, among other things. And I know, TMC, I know you probably have a couple things up your sleeve that we'll go on with, too, to add in. But here we have something that is not even that new. This is from 2015. Systems and techniques for progressive radar-assisted facial recognition. An image may be obtained from a camera of the security device. The facial target in the image may be identified. The facial target may include a non-empty set of positive facial indicators and may also be missing a non-empty set of facial indicators. So they can do some fill in the blanks. That's where now, if you have a face with a mask over half of it, the current research and development is in coming up with something that can still identify and get a positive facial match, even with an obstruction on half of that face. How do they do this? Millimeter wave radar. And that's, how is it done? It's done very, very well nowadays. I could go to some of these diagrams, but if you want, you can lead us around.
Sure. So I've got notes on this, albeit they're not highlighted out. I just looked at them briefly. Really, the takeaway from this patent is they can set up a wireless system, millimeter wave system, that overlaps a visual system. So a camera, you got a security camera pointed at a certain direction, and it has like a 140 degree view or 180 degree view or whatever, right? And what they can do is they use facial recognition technology. Obviously, it's pretty commonly understood. They can see with a certain amount of resolution, and they understand who you are based on your face print, right? A biometric parameter that is your face. Well, this patent talks about being able to see through materials, fabrics, and others to recreate or repopulate missing information that the camera is not able to pick up. It could be a shadow, it could be a cloth, it could be something a little more rigid. And what they talk about in here is using millimeter waves to bounce off of your face, off of your body, in order to create a composite, an image that is the summation or the combination of the millimeter wave reflections that are put through machine learning algorithms, whatever cool little cliche you want to put on it, and then overlapped or used with, like a recipe, what they do have from your face print that they've gotten out of a camera. So they take the two, put them together, and they render a positive ID of a certain percentage, 98% positive, 90% positive, 80% positive. And what they talk about in this patent is that they start with a small amount of millimeter wave power, and then they slowly, progressively increase the power of the millimeter waves to push through barriers or obstructions to get the level of resolution that they're looking for, that they cannot get just out of a camera.
Mm-hmm.
So what this tells me is that millimeter wave radar, right? Millimeter wave radar, which is what we're moving into with the new networks that we're putting up, are able to map and image your face and the rest of your body for that matter. But this patent specifically talks about being able to map your face with enough accuracy to identify you with your biometrics, your unique biometrics, the unique structure, morphology of your face, your head. They can do this with other components of your body too. Skeletal structure, organ size, those things are not necessarily in this patent. But if you can take the next logical step, right? I could show you other patents that clearly line this out. Take the next logical step. If they can use radiation, millimeter wave radar, millimeter wave wireless energy, the same stuff that they're advertising for 5G and WiGig, 60 gigahertz is what I commonly hear people think that 5G is. It's so much more than 60 gigahertz. 60 gigahertz is just the new Wi-Fi. Right. And it's going to be unlicensed spectrum that's going to be used for 5G communications out in public space. But 5G millimeter waves run the gamut in the spectrum. They're not exclusive to 60 gigahertz. So millimeter wave radiation is able to be bounced off your face, meaning if some of it bounces off your tissue, some of it bounces off the bone, some of it bounces off the muscle, some of it bounces off the cartilage, and every one of those things uniquely changes the electromagnetic waves as they pass through it or are reflected off or are refracted. They bounce off into a different direction.
They're either bounced or they're absorbed or they're bounced off at an angle or they come back altered. Right. And then that is
reflection, refraction, or absorption.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
It's really what it is. It's reflection, refraction, or absorption. A reflection is just
literally wearing a mask. TMC, what if a person's wearing a mask? This is a question from Chazatron out there. Yeah. Because if this stuff can penetrate through substances, depending on how they tune it, it might be able to read through a mask of certain types.
That's right.
To the face underneath.
That's what the patent talks about. Specifically, one of the specific examples that patent gives is somebody wearing a mask, intentionally trying to subvert a camera-based facial recognition system.
Yep.
Is one of the reasons that they give that provides, or that this patent provides a benefit for, is being able to overcome somebody's attempt at hiding their face from a camera.
Gotcha.
So the next step would be for them to be able to image the rest of your body. And to what resolution, that's, up to your own imagination to figure out or wonder how detailed wireless radiation can get with respect to your anatomy, and then be able to uniquely identify you in a public space and track you, quite frankly, in a public space. It's beyond facial recognition. And the reason I think that this is important or relevant is that we've seen the older versions of covert image capturing that they're disclosing, right, from the Cold War era, micro cameras, microdots, that kind of stuff, hidden cameras, etc., to to masks, right? The masks that they talked about the CIA was using were good enough to have long-term intimate discussions with people, and you would not necessarily be detected. Well, radar kind of gets around all that, because radar would be able to see and understand the different layers that are associated, and ultimately be able to identify your bones and your cartilage, and perhaps even your connective tissues and your muscles that are going to have a unique signature, a unique electromagnetic signature when compared to something like latex or some other composite material, synthetic material that to the eye looks like skin, but in fact is not. And we're talking about also tonight this idea of cybersecurity at the United States Capitol. And if there are publicly available patents, and the one that we just looked at was from Intel, publicly available patents that indicate that wireless radiation coupled with a camera can overcome masked facial coverings, what kind of security do you think really exists at the Capitol? Do you think they employ AI at the Capitol? Do you think they use Do you think they use high definition cameras? Do you think they have the latest and greatest wireless technology there? Don't you think that perhaps that they would have fusion based systems? What I mean by fusion is that for security purposes, being that it is a high value target, this idea of integrating the wireless networks, wireless surveillance, wireless communications, in addition to the cameras and every other hidden form of surveillance mechanisms they have there for congressional security, VIP level security, don't you think that they would have a real clear picture of what's really going on?
Yep.
Whose heart's really beating fast? Who's not?
They're going to have maybe even 4K surveillance cameras, and they're going to be equipped with other sensing, such as infrared. They may even be in an electromagnetic field, so that they can radar image other aspects that can't be detected optically on the camera.
Definitely.
That would be my guess.
If you have these technologies deployed in airports, don't you think the U.S. Capitol would qualify as well for these types of technologies?
Totally.
Yeah, which makes one wonder just how much information do they really have on all these staffers? How does the CIA really spy on Congress? Is it just by reading their emails? I don't think so. I would imagine it's through these complex systems whereby they could track them in real time using the very same information networks that the people who are performing work in these buildings use to conduct communications. The very same networks can be used for surveillance.
If their desire is to observe and surveil people, and if they have these far more advanced tools, you know that they're going to use them. Every possible tool that can be made to work reliably.
Maybe we should look at the Wi-Fi ultra wideband tab and look at those videos.
Got it right here someplace. Yep. Give me a second. Here we go.
This is just commercial grade, folks, what we're going to show you. This is just commercial grade. This isn't something that should
not military
be installed
grade.
At the... Yeah, exactly.
All right.
The other one. It's going to be under the wireless and then under ultra wideband.
By the way, you're seeing TMC's webpage, his repository information. It is found at humaninternet.org. Yeah, tell me where to go here.
That one right there. Wi-Fi ultra wideband.
Gotcha.
And then these two videos here, Seleno's Wi-Fi Doppler, which kind of gives you basic, and then the emotional radar. These two videos that you're seeing right on the screen right here.
Want to play them with sound?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Okay, let me share with sound. Hold on 1 second. Coming right up. This. Okay, here we go.
Introducing Seleno's Wi-Fi Doppler imaging, a breakthrough RF imaging technology for tracking the motion, behavior, and location of people over. When Wi-Fi signals echo off a moving object, a frequency shift occurs, known as the Doppler effect. It can be used to measure the range and direction of a moving object to track its location, and enables the classification of movements and postures using machine learning. Wi-Fi Doppler imaging offers myriad capabilities for depicting real-time events, including recognizing gestures and classifying common body movements, labeling objects, tracking objects, and detecting breathing and other vital signs. Wi-Fi Doppler imaging enables applications such as intrusion detection for enhanced labeling objects, tracking objects, and detecting breathing and other vital.
You're on mute, but yeah.
I'm muted. Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yep. Just because she's going through it so fast, I just wanted to slow her down a little bit. Object labeling, that would be a person. Tracking, where are you going?
Object labeling is beyond a person. That could be a person, a pet. It can be the difference between a coffee table and a bed versus a couch.
Yep.
They all have different reflective properties.
Yep. And internals. Once you detect whether it's a pet or a human or whatever, now you can go inside and
with the millimeter wave radiation.
Very high resolution.
Yeah, you get much higher resolution. And you get that resolution with the 2.4 and the 5 gigahertz, but you don't get the spectrum. You can get wideband spectrum. You can get broadband spectrum with 2.4. You can get wideband spectrum, which is a higher amount of spectrum from a 5 gigahertz signal. Most routers now come standard with 5 gigahertz and 60 gigahertz. You can argue that 60 gigahertz won't penetrate deep into tissues, but it's not necessarily true. You can use wave interference to create new frequencies at a target point. So this whole sales pitch of millimeter waves not being harmful because they don't go past your skin. It's bullshit.
I know what you mean. You mean. Yeah. You send out 59 gigahertz and 60 gigahertz, and the difference between the two is 1 gigahertz, which will. Yeah,
you get at that point you have 4 different signals that are going out. You have for the scenario you just gave, you have 59 gigahertz, you have 60 gigahertz, you have 61 gigahertz, and you also have 1 gigahertz.
Right.
And if you want to complex it even more, you can then take those and bounce those into each other to create additional frequencies where the 1 gigahertz can interact with the 59 or the 60 independently or the 61.
Yep. And you know what?
You can go on and on and on with those kind of combinations to create any frequency spectrum you want.
If you're the computer that is either inside or controlling that Wi-Fi beaming device, that transmitting device, as long as you know what you're sending out, and as long as you can read what you're getting back, you can come up with an interpretation of it based on knowing what frequencies you sent out, what direction they were in, also probably what phase they were in and what phase angle they were in, right? All that.
Yeah, you would have to know what you started with and then read what you get. And
right. Yeah. As long as you know what you sent out and how it comes back, you can come up with some sort of a characterization of what it encountered. And this is not just, okay, I bounced off of a coffee cup on the table. This is way, way, way better than that. I bounced off of the left nodule of your right kidney in your body, and it was swollen. stuff like that. Anyway,
yeah, I'm going to show you another. I want to show you another patent when we're done with these videos.
Oh, all right. I'll put this back up. Yeah. But this one's let's go through on this thing.
Signs. Wi-Fi Doppler imaging enables applications such as intrusion detection for enhanced home and enterprise security. The RF imaging-based technology is a simple and ingenious method for driving TV content consumption analytics. By enabling the determination of who is sitting in front of the screen at any given time, it allows the service provider or advertiser to personalize content accordingly. Wi-Fi Doppler imaging is also highly effective as a remote monitoring solution for connecting elderly people who live on their own to family, caregivers, and emergency services. It triggers alerts if anything irregular or dangerous occurs without requiring individuals to use wearables. Wi-Fi Doppler imaging has numerous benefits as an event depiction technology. It combines imaging technology and standard Wi-Fi networking over a single state-of-the-art connectivity chip. It achieves high-resolution localization using a single device rather than relying on multiple devices. It's going
through floors and walls and everything.
And context analysis. And
just want to note here that it's passing through multiple walls, multiple floors. So just because you may not have a Wi-Fi router or a phone that emits Wi-Fi in this example, doesn't mean that your neighbors' devices aren't able to understand and conduct surveillance on you.
Gee, you know something, TMC? I live in a condominium, and there is only a wooden wall between me to the left and the neighbor to the left, and then another wooden wall to the neighbor to the right. So I might take some sort of responsibility for having certain devices or absence of devices in my own residence. But what about my neighbor's brand new, high-tech, 60 gigahertz Wi-Fi router beaming through into my living space?
That's right.
Whoa. I didn't think of that.
Yeah, it makes you wonder a whole lot about the Trump Tower spying now, huh?
Mm-hmm. And other applications too.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's wild. That's wild.
Using a single device rather than relying on multiple devices. It's optimal for motion classification for posture identification and context analysis. And because it's free of line-of-sight constraints, it can virtually see through walls, enabling an expanding array of value-added indoor applications for service providers and their partners, without the need for deploying additional infrastructure on customer premises. Wi-Fi Doppler imaging. It's Wi-Fi reimagined.
Service providers and their partners. So can I ask this one really important question? I have a service provider. Do I have any control over who they decide to partner with? And are they at,
do you have any control over them using their hardware / software to deliver you data service? Do you have any control over them using that to surveil you?
None.
What does a digital bill of rights look like?
We are way behind in that Bill of Rights. I mean, when I say way behind, we're a couple decades behind on that Bill of Rights.
We're being metadatally raped, metaphysically raped.
So, I mean, in all honesty, I wouldn't expect my service provider to tell me who they partnered with. I think I want them to, but I wouldn't. I know the way the world is, and I wouldn't think that they would. Or say what?
They're not going to tell you.
No,
they're gonna require that you acknowledge and accept that they're going to profit from this information, but they're not going to tell you who.
Right. Otherwise, it's denial of service. Okay, well, we can't provide you internet.
That's right.
But you can have slow speed. You can have 28.8 on your copper pair. If anyone remembers that. You can have 56K, but you can't have 1 gig down.
So this is the physical piece, right? If we go to the next video, it's the emotional piece where they're actually getting into your understanding your emotions. It's that one. You got it right there.
This looks nifty. So what could go wrong if they wanted to read my emotions? Well, first of all, what could go wrong if I don't know who my service provider is partnering with? Nothing could possibly go wrong with that, right? Right. Okay. So now nothing could possibly go wrong if they're reading. Never mind.
This video describes EQ radio, a new technology from Professor Kitabi's group at MIT that can recognize emotions using signals. Was there a moment in your life when you looked at someone's face, but you could not figure out how they feel? What if your wireless router can tell people's emotions even if they don't show them on their faces? This is exactly what our technology does.
TMC.
No.
I can't even listen to this. I don't need this.
It's too bad it's here,
do
buddy.
not need.
This is why when you were
Can
showing
we
these
just do
articles
a
earlier, we were
poll out
talking
there
about these.
in the chat and in the comments, and if you watch this later, we just put a comment. Do you need your router to recognize your emotions? It's just
not about what you need. It's about what the apparatus, what the state, what the system needs. And what they need is to understand you well enough to implement totalitarian, technocratic, complete technotronic mind control, meat suit control, total meat suit control.
What if my wireless router could first detect my emotions and then, based on other patents that we have shown and other work and prototyping that functions, could then send out a sequence of electromagnetic waves to alter my mental state?
There's a patent for that. I'll dig it up for you while you're.
Of course.
Yeah, there's a patent for that.
I almost can't bear to play the rest of this because it's almost revolting to me. But I will, just in the interests of professionalism and trying to do a good job here in bringing you what I don't want to see, but I know that we all need to see. So I'm going to hit the play button right now. Here we go.
Can tell people's emotions even if they don't show them on their faces. This is exactly what our technology does. This is our device. The device transmits a wireless signal which reflects off a person's body and comes back. It captures these reflections and analyzes them to infer the person's emotions. Specifically, our algorithms zoom in on the wireless reflections to extract the minute variations due to breathing and heartbeats. We then further analyze these reflections to extract the breathing signal and the heartbeat signal. We then zoom in more on these signals to obtain individual heartbeats and breathing cycles and feed these as features into a machine learning algorithm to recognize a person's emotions.
I'm just going to add, that's what this one can do, but then there's going to be another associated device that can also monitor and listen and pick up the brain waves that you have. That's not this device, but there is another device that can do that.
Well, we're still talking about the same device. We're talking about your Wi-Fi router right now.
Oh, that could do it, actually.
Well, both of these videos are implicating that Wi-Fi routers can do these things.
Emotions. The device can automatically know if the person is excited, angry, sad, or happy. Our device can recognize emotions with an accuracy of 87% while relying purely on wireless signals. We envision that EQ radio can be used in many applications. It can recognize a person's emotions while he is watching a movie and provide movie makers with better tools to evaluate user experience. It can also allow smart environments to detect emotional states like depression and inform us to improve our emotional well-being. It can even enable these environments to react to our moods and adjust lighting or music accordingly. To learn more about this research, please check out our website.
Yeah, so
I'm speechless.
Yeah, so they say that, movie makers would know what the emotional feedback was. Well, that means that while you're watching the video, they'd have to be measuring your emotions in real time and then giving that information back to the movie companies. But they just make it look like it's for your convenience because then they're going to make better movies. So isn't that great? Yeah. Yeah.
They sell it like it's such a great gift of technology to you while they take control of your body and mind to enslave you. That is a quote from Val. Thank you, Val.
Yeah. So I'm going to show you. Let me make sure I've got the right one up here. I'm going to show you two things. And
these little publications, these little video shorts, they're created very carefully. They pick a really, really pleasant way to illustrate. They pick a verbal presenter who has a very nice and non-threatening voice, not something like my voice, which can be very threatening and overbearing. They wouldn't use me or you, you know. They find someone very pleasant. It's all very nice, cushy and fluffy. And, oh, isn't it going to be an enhancement to your life? No, it isn't. It's going to be, it's going to become a dependency that people have. And it's an exploitation. It's an invasion.
So here's the next step. A method for monitoring and communicating biomedical electromagnetic fields. This is from IBM, originally filed in 2008. This present invention provides a system and a method that can monitor a biomedical-based electromagnetic field, for example, a heart rate variability field emitted by a human user, known as the sender, and communicate the biomedical-based electromagnetic field to a remote receiver, another person, by measuring the biomedical-based electromagnetic field emitted from the first person, creating an electronic signal that matches the field or that represents the field, converting it to ones and zeros, transmitting it or broadcasting it over the internet, and then applying that signal to another person to convey emotions. Convey emotions.
Conveying the emotion, all right.
So this thing talks about using an electromagnetic coil to pick up emotional signals. Wireless electromagnetic fields can be measured with a wireless coil or a wire coil. And then it can be, this coil can be energized and then insert those emotions, that signature, into another person. I'll show you some examples that they give. The name of one of the people in the example is Helga. So usage scenarios. Buddy wants to send a message to his colleague Helga, right? Demonstrates communication that includes and provides Buddy's heart rate variability field, right? The emotional profile to Helga.
Yep.
As Helga reads the note, this is the intent. Buddy wants to send a note with his emotions associated to the note to Helga so that when Helga reads the note, she feels what Buddy feels. A whole new level of creepy, right? Especially at work. Anyway, Buddy brings up the send it with feeling service. The GUI, right?
Send it with feeling service.
Right. That's what the SWIFT is right there, right? On his computer in order to send a message note to his colleague Helga, describing how happy and contented he is working on his current project. Since Buddy is feeling precisely the happiness and contentment he writes, or as he writes the note, he selects the record field option when he starts authoring the note. The Send It With Feeling service client begins to record his bioelectromagnetic field, his heart rate variability field, in the manner as described in the present application. Once he's finished authoring the note, Buddy selects the send command. The Send It With Feeling service client encodes the heart rate variability field data that it has recorded and includes it as an attachment to the note it sends to Helga. Helga receives the note from Buddy on her Send It With Feeling service client. When she reads the note, Helga not only is shown all of the data, for example, text and graphics in the note that Buddy sent, but she also has Buddy's heart rate variability field applied to her, decoded from the data attached to Buddy's message so that she can feel the heart rate variability field or the happiness of Buddy. Buddy's bioelectromagnetic signature has been read, captured, transmitted, and then injected or inserted into Helga so that Helga feels as Buddy felt when Buddy sent the message. Note that if Helga had read Buddy's note using a standard instant messenger client, the encoded heart rate variability field data would not have been sent. It would have been ignored. Second scenario. Check this out. Buddy sends a message to Helga. that includes an extended emoticon, which provides one of Buddy's particular heart rate variability fields to Helga when she reads the note. What? So at one point, using his Send It With Feeling service client, just some app, Buddy records his heart rate variability field, his unique bioelectromagnetic signature when he's feeling particularly sad, tagging this data with the frowny face emoticon. The Send It With Feeling service client stores this data in a database, his emotional profile in a database, in encrypted form, of course, along with its association to the frowny face emoticon for future use. At a later time, Buddy learns that he's being reassigned to a new project, which is sure to be irritating. Using the Send It With Feeling service client messaging authoring application, Buddy writes another message to his colleague Helga. In the note, Buddy explains the situation, ending the description with the frowny face emoticon that has his pre-recorded emotional state. When he sends the note, he includes the encrypted heart rate variability field, right, the emotional profile associated with the frowny face emoticon, as well as the indication that the frowny face emoticon should be associated with the given encrypted heart rate variability field data. So that's legalese. I'm trying to paraphrase for you as best I can. He's pre-recorded his I'm pissed off or I'm sad or woe is me emotions and associated it to an emoticon, a frowny face emoticon, and that's stored in a database. He attaches it to a message that he's sending to Helga so he can make Helga feel like shit. I'll explain further. Helga receives the note from Buddy and begins reading it using her specific encrypted Send It With Feeling service client messaging app on her computer. As soon as the frowny face emoticon becomes visible to Helga, the Send It With Feeling software message application decodes the heart rate variability field data that was pre-recorded by Buddy when Buddy felt like shit and applies it to Helga so that Helga can feel like shit.
Lousy too.
Or feel the sadness of Buddy as she's reading the sad note from Buddy.
So what if somebody else comes in and modifies messages?
Well,
and
there's a lot going on here. And you're on the right track. It's this. You have a coil that can measure your emotional state, or Wi-Fi, as we just looked at from MIT, that says that they can measure your emotional state and make some sense of it. They can record it. And then this patent talks about being able to transmit an electromagnetic signature into your brain or your nervous system, into your body, to make you feel a particular way. In order to do that, it needs to have a unique emotional profile of you, because your electromagnetic signature is like a fingerprint. So everybody would have a database profile of a certain amount of emotional profiles or emotional states within their profile: happy, sad, elated, aroused,
and they're
disgusted.
Uniquely your own.
Right. And you would have a list of different emotional states, and everybody would have a unique signature, a unique electromagnetic signature profile associated with each of the emotional states that would be stored as them in the proverbial cloud, so that when the frowny face emoticon from Buddy was sent to Helga, it would access Helga's unique emotional signature from her database so that it would be the most effective to Helga, because everybody's electromagnetic signature is a little bit different.
Right.
The last scenario, which is important, Buddy participates in an online community in which all of the other participants' emotional fields are sent and applied to all of the other participants. It's like group emotional sex. Buddy brings up his Send It With Feeling service online community application on his computer and connects to the Swiftest server. The Swiftest online community application downloads the available discussion rooms from the Swiftest server and begins monitoring Buddy's heart rate variability field. Buddy chooses what bugs me room. This is just a stupid example, right? As soon as he does, the online community application begins sending an encoded form of Buddy's emotional data to the Send It With Feeling service server. The Send It With Feeling service server online community application on Buddy's client also listens for updates whenever one arrives, blah, 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 blah. So these are just examples. They actually get into the nuts and bolts of this group thing right here. They can send you a unique emotional state from one person in the group, or send you the collective emotional state.
That's what I was going to say. What about the collective?
What would technology like this do in a massive gathering of people? What about a rally? What about a protest? What about a rock concert? What about every time a political candidate comes on TV for an ad for an election cycle?
Right.
How does this technology play into the manipulation of what our reality is? How does this play into deception?
Yes.
How does this play into all of that? And one more thing, I know we're running short on time here, so I want to show you this real quick. This is a method and apparatus for examining an object using millimeter wave signal illumination. And so when we think about modern wireless systems in the Capitol probably having the latest and greatest, you have beamforming, you have directed energy systems. What I want to show you here is that you can have two different beams that are coalesced, that are coalesced or coincided at one location, and they can basically create unique envelopes of energy there in order to scan and differentiate between bone, flesh, and metal. And I'm being very general here.
Sure.
And this is from Boeing. Once you have the technology, you can convert it into software, and then you can make the software match whatever hardware components exist. If you have antennas, you can apply software to do these things. At that point, it's a question of how sophisticated is the software and how sophisticated are your antennas. And that's going to basically line out what your technical capabilities are. Are you able to image? If so, to what resolution? How fast can an object move and still maintain good resolution? Can you track more than one object at a time?
Right. How many objects simultaneously can be tracked? Yep.
Can you track an object or multiple objects physically and understand things like the emotional state and keep everything straight? Person A versus B versus C versus D versus E. Understanding who they are, identify who they are, right? And where they're going, understand what they're doing, make references or inferences to how they interact with each other or others, and track their emotional states all in real time without cameras, folks.
Right.
This is just with directed energy systems, millimeter wave systems. Anyway,
that's unbelievable.
It's here. And this was in 2011, bro.
Oh, 2011.
Yeah.
We got to let that sink in for a few minutes too.
Yeah.
You know, when we talk about this stuff and you say they're already doing it.
Yeah.
Half the time I don't want to believe you, but I respect your digestion of these patents. And when you show me something like this, I say, TMC's right. If they've got the tool,
this is just what's public, man.
Not using these tools. Foolish to think that they're not using them, especially if they're 9 years more mature now.
And this is just what's in the public space. Can you imagine how many years before this was actually published that they had this kind of technology? It was only published so that it can be commercialized. Just to put another layer to the onion, right? If this was made public, put into the public space in 2011, if it was filed in 2011, right? Assigned in 2011, in this case, in January of 2011, published in 2012, how long before it actually went into the public space did it exist and was in use?
It wouldn't be more than a few years.
I disagree. I think they can develop technologies and they are used in a military capacity, never see the light of day until they're obsolete, and then they can be commercialized, and only then are they brought out into the public space. Typically what I look at is in the aerospace / tech sector, and then they're converted into medical and or communications type patents.
Right. And by then, the military has the next thing
Way
that
better.
you won't hear about until they're done with that one, and they retire.
I could show you this patent and 3 or 4 others that blow your mind. You can look up pencil beam forming. You can look that up, and that's this idea where Boeing, I believe, is able to create incredibly thin laser-like beams of radiation. Not lasers, not in the light spectrum, but in the radio wave and in the millimeter wave spectrum, laser beam, pencil beam forming. And they use that stuff for missile defense, where they can send out a radar array, if you will, and use pencil beams, they call it pencil beam forming, and they're able to track and understand time of flight, speed, direction, everything of multiple objects in the air, covering vast amounts of distances very, very quickly.
Right.
In all 3 dimensions. And they could do it with what they call pencil beam forming, which means that the precision with which they understand the exact location and trajectory characteristics and potentially be able to identify what it is. If you can receive those reflections from the pencil thin, so to speak,
and you can induce the density, the absorption, or the reflectivity,
and or destroy it with electromagnetic energy.
Yep. All that they have to do with whatever's coming back is consult the stored lookup table of what all the characteristics of each type of encountered substance is, and now they know what substance they just hit.
Yes. So you can see how, looking at something like this, the implications flower out, and they ripple out to the point where you're mentally fatigued before you even begin. The technology is incredible. It's incredible. And we're putting up commercial versions of what was military tech like 10 years ago. And now we're putting up commercial infrastructure that's going to give military grade precision, military grade techniques, offensive as well as surveillance, to corporations.
There's a funny thing about technology. Whether it be large concerns, big companies, when a technology becomes available, they want it, even though maybe they shouldn't want it. And I'm going back to the send it with feeling system now, which is they're actually going to want that. They're going to want to be able to send along to the enhanced receiver the send it with feeling data along with just the simple graphics and text. And at the same time, they should not want to use it by recognizing what an invasion it is.
Wow.
And
it's
they shouldn't want it,
but legalized through targeted advertising and organizations or companies like Nielsen or Effectiva, where they are in the business of understanding consumer sentiment.
Right.
The monetization of consumer sentiment has enabled an entire ecosystem of these technologies to be developed and deployed for commercial applications. And so that third-party scenario that you were going with earlier, to my service provider, I have to agree, it's that. And it's to do things like understand you down to what makes you tick. What turns you on, what turns you off, what pisses you off, what makes you happy.
Well, we knew that our data was for sale some number of years ago after certain levels of development of the internet.
But we think it's emails, what we say on the phone, what pictures we have on our phone, things that we consciously look at and can self-identify with or identify physically on a phone. That's what we understand the general populace thinks is their data. Right. Now, way beyond that.
Yep. Add more and it's real. So now
we're at the point where any biometric signature is probably the best word to use. Anything that can be extracted from a biological as a form of biometric information is also collected and sold and commoditized.
For sale. And that adds more value to that saleable product. And somehow
we are the product. That's why things like Twitter and Facebook are free. That's why Gmail's free. That's why the search engine is free. Because the human is the commodity on so many levels. So many levels. And tech is no different than pharma or food or whatever stupid commercial you want to see on TV.
You know how complicated the logistics are to coming up with some sort of a regulatory agency for this? That it's really a lot.
It wouldn't take much. It really wouldn't take much, because there is enough enough has been done today, in my opinion, to set expectations and standards and precedents through holding people accountable who up to this point have already violated the spirit or the intent of something like the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. And if we don't get to that point very soon, we won't have an opportunity to get to that point, because we won't even know that we don't know anymore. If they can manipulate emotions using antennas and extract emotions using antennas, who do you think they're really going after?
Us.
The children. Where did society, where did the underlying fabric of society really start eroding in an aggressive way? And it was at the institutional level, because the institutional level, collegiate level, sets the tempo for the rest of society. They are the ones that get the degrees. They are the ones that then teach the young. They are the ones that get into middle and executive level management, which then set the policy, the social conditioning for the rest of society. They're going after children just as much as they go after them to rape them and kill them. They're going after them to psychologically do the same thing. And that is the underpinning essence of this technotronic, positronic,
there's value
mind
there for
control.
Them. They can use that to market products, to more effectively target and control.
That is the legalized facade. That is the fascia over the underlying social engineering construct that is the plan to re-engineer society and make them moldable and pliable, and do so in a way that we love it, that we want to embrace it. Like, oh, I can send my friend the feeling that I'm happy, even though I feel like shit. I want to make a good impression. So I've got a pre-recorded emoticon of a smiley face. So even though I want to punch him in the fucking face, I'm going to send him a happy face so they think I like him.
One. Right.
You see how that's just a small example of how absolutely warped society will be when this becomes normal.
I got to just ponder, what is it that makes people, because I know people are going to want this. What is it that makes them want this? I do not want it. What makes people want this enhanced?
The longer we stay locked down, the longer we stay isolated, the longer we stay convinced that being around another meat suit is dirty. If I have to wear a mask to have sex, this is going to look a hell of a lot better.
Yeah. You know what? This is playing into the isolation, the social distancing. And of course, now we have the promise of there being...
creating the synthetic environment, that the organic biologic environment is bad, and then ushering in the facsimile, the digitized version of everything that we're supposed to want and need. Everything that we do want and need as social creatures is going to be provided to us through a man in the middle, through a digital interface that can be manipulated at the most, and at a minimum monitored 100% of the time to understand and affect future outcome of events. That is what's happening right now.
Right. Yep.
Don't have sex with a mask on. That's all I'm saying.
And you know what? If you're going to do it, probably be a good idea to do it in person, up close and personal with another individual, preferably of the opposite sex, rather than doing it by way of a computer. Just my thinking, for what it's worth. Val is betting that they tinker with our memories too. She feels, and I would corroborate this, that many people nowadays seem to have issues trying to remember things, and also remembering them in a very clear and logical and organized way too. Noticing that they're more I don't know, more jumbled thoughts, things that are associated that shouldn't be, and things that should be associated which aren't associated with each other. And so this adds to the confusion. It makes people, it actually doesn't let them know that they don't understand things as logically and in best organization that they could. But it does make it so that they have less power because they understand their world less accurately and less vividly. So yeah, people trying to remember simple things, particular words to say while speaking, and she probably knows some people that have experienced that. And Oleanne, how you doing? Good to see you. We need to know this because what comes next is some sort of way of either regulating this out of our lives or regulating control that is designed for our well-being and our protection into this stuff. And nobody's going to make that happen but us. You will never see the corporations and the institutions that are developing this come forward and offer you a way to control or restrict the use of that technology, because that's not why they're designing it to begin with. They would never come back and offer you the opportunity to control them. Well, we've used all our time. Again, a lot to think about. And I know that everybody that gets a whiff of this show, at least particularly this one, they're going to want to think about it. Well, all right. Fascinating. Disturbing. That's a wrap for this week. TMC, how can I thank you for working with me on this? And I'm hoping that we can continue bringing it further, and we need to keep up with it. So I think we kind of need to keep bringing this as things develop. That forms our knowledge base for knowing what we need control over and what literally some of the threats to us are out there. As usual, I think I want to ask you to have the last word, and we'll
until next week. I'm curious to see where we go from here. These topics in particular really resonate with me. If you didn't notice, so
this is so important.
Yeah,
so utterly important.
It's the future of everything.
Thing that happens when people start using these things become crutches. They become replacements for the organic experience. And the further and further that we get away from the organic experience, the less like what we thought a human was, really. The less human experience, the less connection. So, all right. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next week. Same time, same place, new stuff. And man, there is new stuff. Be well, be healthy, and think positive. I'd like to say more, but we're just out of time. I feel this as much as you do. So, good night, everybody.
See ya.